Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Jared Brandon Wound Pickups.
Hey everybody, it's me, Todd Novak. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs podcast. We're mega happy that you are listening along with us right now. We love our little show, and we hope you do too. If this is your first time, we're really excited to have you with us. And if this is your 100 and whatever time, well, kick back. You know how this goes, and you should enjoy it. Especially since we've got our first three-peat.
SNL, he gets a special blazer.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
you're a three-timer.
Yeah. Jeff is our Alec Baldwin.
Oh, man. Great.
Anyways, yeah, so we have Jeff Schroeder. I'm just going to introduce him. Jeff Schroeder is joining us again from Smashing Pumkins and Night Dreamer, which is a very exciting project that he's doing. I don't know if you call that. What would you like to call that? Do you call that a project to other people? Is it a band? What do you do?
It's a band, yeah.
Okay.
It's just a band. Okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm from that generation to where, I mean, I'm sure, there's maybe some newer type of terminology, but for me, it's still just a band.
It's a band.
All right. Well, it's not just a band. It's outstanding, and I've been privy to see it live, and it was great. So I'm very excited to talk to you about that. Tony, tell the people what we do on the show, will you? Jared.
So, under normal circumstances, we like to talk about gear and the makers of the gear, specifically boutique gear.
Yeah.
That would be things like guitars and amplifiers and effects pedals and pedal boards and accessories and all the good stuff.
And 101s once in a while. We get to learn about things.
Yes.
We do learn. We learn and learn.
We're due for another one of those. I've had a couple suggestions and a couple things that I've been wanting to broach, subjects that I want to broach, but the three of us will have to discuss that, what we want to come up next. And for today, we've got somebody who is deep in the music industry in several ways, and very excited to hear basically where you're at with this is going to be gear focused. It is, I promise it is. We're going to learn a lot about it, but we're going to go at it by way of of Jeff's diverse needs for gear musically. So how about that little setup?
Wow.
Do you like that? Is that okay, Jeff?
Sounds
Did I do all right?
Yeah, it's great.
It's
great.
So anyways, we got a couple of announcements real quick. We need to thank Rode. Thanks, Tony. We need to thank Rode for the Rodecaster Pro, this awesome machine in front of us, making all of this delightfulness happen. And for the Procaster mics, which just keep going. And we're mighty thankful that Rode has been so supportive of our show. If you are thinking about starting your own podcast, or you just maybe, you just like to record yourself, like to hear yourself for posterity or something.
You can say anything in these things and they still work.
And they sound better than you just saying them.
They should make a T-shirt, and that's what Rode should sell.
There you go.
You can say anything into these things and they'll still work. Words of wisdom. Oh boy.
I'm gonna ponder that for a few moments.
Yes.
We'll try it out.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up something, and Jeff, I'd love to hear for you to weigh in on this too. We got a question from one of our Patreon supporters, and this is from Jonathan Schwartz. He said, question, I mostly play Fender guitars with Cluzon tuners. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of putting locking tuners on my Mustang. Okay. Cluzon makes a set of CBS style tuners, Fender CBS style tuners, that should be a direct replacement. Does anyone know if the extra mass with locking tuners will improve sustain, even if just a little bit? Tony, you probably don't have anything to say about this. But
no.
Go ahead. Share.
Don't do it. Stop while you're ahead. Well, okay, so there's a couple of schools of thought. I subscribe to the school of thought that the lighter weight, lower mass tuner works better on most guitars. If you have, back in the 70s and the 80s, everybody would, if they had any kind of tuning problem, they automatically assumed it was the tuner, and they slapped on, Grovers and Schallers and, brass nuts and all the stuff that, allegedly increased sustain. But in my experience, I don't think that it really, it certainly changes the tone. I don't know that it increases sustain. I think he was talking about the Cluson F tuners that, like, they were supposed to replicate what Fender used in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s. And I don't know if those are direct replacement.
Well,
that I'm not 100% sure of.
Yeah.
Cluson, who is owned by WD Music, also, I think they have high mass direct replacement that you might have to open up the shaft holes a little bit to make them fit okay, but that would be something that would have to be done with the CBS Fender tuners anyhow, because they're a little bit bigger around for the hole that goes through the headstock.
And if for whoever doesn't know what a Cluson style tuner is, they're the ones on the back that look kind of antique-y. They're it's almost like a tin, like a tin molded.
It's like a rectangle.
Like a rectangle.
Yeah.
They just
like a rectangular box, very square.
Got some stripes on it.
Yeah, there's either single line or double line.
Yeah.
So, Clusons, of course, I think were one of the original tuning machine companies. And the design has changed very little over the years. Now, they've made improvements, and there are some, upgrades available. But I don't know that he's going to get that much difference until he gets to something like a higher mass tuner, like a Grover or a Schaller.
Goto.
Goto makes versions of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Goto also makes versions of Cluson tuners too. So,
well, when he asked me that, I did a little bit of research, and from everything I could find, it was basically no, it doesn't change your sustain at all. But we did talk about when you do upgrade. The nice thing about upgrading to a tuner, to maybe a more precision-based tuner, a higher ratio tuner, and we talked about the ratio on tuning. So when you go to a higher ratio tuner, if you see one that says like 18-1 versus like a 10 or 12-1, that's 18 turns to move the post around one time. The more turns you have, the more precise tuning you can get. So if you've got a guitar, you can never seem to peg the G, right? It's just like on this side or this side or this side or this side. If you upgrade your tuners, you might be able to hit that. Fair to say?
The high ratio tuning machines are more precise. However, that also means that you're going to have to turn the tuner when you're restringing the guitar, twice as many times to get it into that area. So,
yes.
Me personally, not a fan of locking tuners. Not necessarily a fan of putting, sealed machines on a, especially on a vintage Fender.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see a real advantage. Tonally or otherwise.
Jeff, can you weigh in on this at all? Do you have any opinions on locking tuners?
I would,
and stuff?
On new guitars that I have that don't have like a locking nut or anything like that, I don't mind locking tuners just because it makes string changes much like 10 times faster. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I don't really notice any kind of tonal difference. And I've probably most familiar with the Gotos. They seem, they're pretty low profile these days. I think in the early days, it looked really awful. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of a bum, even though no one could see it like as just plain, you'd be like, oh, those locking tuners don't look too cool. I would never really put it like on any of my Jazz Masters or anything like that. I prefer just the old school Fender tuners, and I've never really had if you have a good luthier or whatever set up your guitar, I've never really had any problems. Like I said, on new guitars, I have, like if Yamaha builds me something or customizes something, we usually just, out of convenience sake, put locking tuners. I don't know. I don't think it was any reason was ever because of increased sustain. And I would agree that for tone up there, I think as you guys said, the biggest issue is going to be the nut, and the material of the nut really makes things sound different. Now how that sounds. We usually do like kind of graph tech. I think is that what the type of thing. Just because of for things that I'm getting made that I'm using live, like tuning stability is kind of key. So I tend to do. We used to use those heads, kind of whatever that type of stuff. But on acoustics and stuff, it would be bone, I guess, or some type of synthetic material that replicates that. But yeah.
Cool. That's definitely. I mean, I like a lot of the graph tech things, especially on guitars that have trems.
Yes, which most of my tend to have. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got a kind of a built-in lubrication, so the string can move freely in there. So, yeah.
Well,
but I would say too, and then a huge. I mean, and this is something you can go 10 layers deep about. I think we do is how the nut is cut, like for each string and for the right gauge, and I mean that has a lot to. I mean, that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, too true.
Yeah. So
what was the question again?
Exactly.
Well, locking tuners for CBS.
Yeah, don't do it.
I wouldn't do it. I've never. I mean, I've on my he says a Mustang, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Those guitars, in general, the Jaguar, Jazzmaster, and Mustang can be kind of plinky sounding. They tend. It's just. I think it's kind of part of the charm and the design. They're not. You're not. It's not going to be like. It's not going to ring out like a Les Paul. Or even a Strat, because I think the Strat bridge is sonically much different than those bridges. On the Mustang. The Mustang's kind of got a weird bridge too. It's kind of different than the Jazzmaster and Jaguar, but I've never really liked the Mustang too much because it just never, I don't know, I could never kind of bond with him. So it's strange that as a big Fender offset person, I never went down that road. I'd try them a bunch, and my friend even let me borrow one for one. I just couldn't bond with it. So, yeah, but I get it. It is like trying to get, you would want maybe a little bit more sustained, but I think it's something about the design of the guitar myself.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Not enough meat on the bone,
Yeah. Mustangs have a short scale, 24-inch. The bodies are almost a quarter-inch thinner than a typical Strat or a Tele. So, they were designed as a student guitar, and, they're still, fun guitars to play. But, yeah, if you're looking for a beefy, meaty sound, you better look elsewhere.
Yeah. Good. Well, that was a great question. See, I like questions that open up to a lot of other kinds of things. So anyways, cool. Well, let's find out what's going on in our music world this week, gentlemen. If we have, we're going to have Tony kick it off, and then we'll jump over to Jeff.
Okay. So this week, I am learning lots about search engine optimization, otherwise known as SEOs. For my website, I have a good friend who just got certified, I guess, in a couple of different things, and she's going to give me a hand with some of the SEOs for my website. So we're trying a couple of different things. We're going to put some new blogs and things out together, but it's really kind of fascinating, and then people that delve into like Google Analytics and things like that. I mean, it's very intriguing, and to see where some of the traffic is coming and all that sort of thing. I mean, I think you could get lost in the weeds there for weeks on end just trying to figure those things out. Mm-hmm. But it's really fascinating stuff, and and I'm kind of excited because based on a couple of searches, I show up as number one for the most part, but I'm falling behind a third or fourth place on a couple of other categories. So we're going to try to fix that.
Good.
Which one? Which one? The most interesting man in the world? Are you're number one?
Well, yes. Now that the what was it? Dudzik now that he's retired.
I have an experience where I tried to do that too. I wanted to buy the Google because when I started doing the T-top bobbins and doing the T-top pickups, I really wanted to get it out there. And I had a listing on eBay. I have to say that because I went through the thing and I signed up, and it's been a while, so I don't remember exactly how I did it all. But I found out that I was not going to beat out eBay. But the good thing was, the first thing that showed up was my pickups on eBay.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do anything. eBay did it for me.
Nice.
So yeah.
That's
So
cool.
I lucked out on that. Otherwise, I'd be in trouble.
Awesome. Hey, Jeff,
Do all
what's
that
going on
stuff.
in your music world?
This week I have been the biggest kind of changes. I finally, and we'll kind of get more into this later. So, I updated my on my Line 6 Helix software to the latest firmware. They just had a kind of a big jump, 2.9, and so I kind of use it obviously on the hardware units, but also they call it Helix Native, which is the plug-in version that you can use with your DAWs. And so they've added a few new pedals and amps and stuff, so I've been kind of delving into that, and that required an upgrade too of the editing software. So, that's the thing, is it's always like a blessing and a curse updating that stuff, because you kind of, with the digital stuff, it's like, it's finally you wrap your head around how to use it. And then they're like, oh, we got this new update. And, you want the 3 new amps and the 5 new pedals. And then you're just like, okay, but now I got to learn how to program it again, because it's always slightly different. But it's fun. So that's what that was a lot of this week, wrapping my head around that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of talk about those, a couple of those machines on the last few podcasts. It's very, very tempting stuff. Yeah. Jared, how about yourself?
So I've been getting ready for our first practice together for 25 years. So I'm getting all these chords and finding out I have all these chords and mic chords and whatever chords that I forgot I had. And it's really nice to find out that you still have things, or you forgot about something and it's like, oh, I have this or whatever. So that's one thing. But on the pickup side, there's a customer that sent me a pickup, and it's from an Epiphone lap steel.
Oh.
And it's a really, really weird kind of coil, and it's a ribbon coil, and I know that's not really going to illustrate anything for anybody, but it's really, really weird, and it reads really low, and the guy's like, hey, listen, this thing's really weak, I don't like it, da-da-da-da-da. So I got lucky, and I bought some weird plastic bass coils, and I was able to actually replace this coil with a bass coil. So I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that's interesting.
With a bass part. So I'm going to fix an old 40s Epiphone lap steel with a bass part.
Neato.
So, yeah.
All right.
That's about it.
Super duper. Go ahead, Tony. All right. So,
How about you, Todd?
Thank you. So this week has been very busy on many fronts on all kinds of guitar stuff for me. But one thing that
I saw all the countdown stuff. That's very exciting.
Yes. Well, by the time people hear this, the album will have been released. But yes, it's very exciting, and it's taken an immense amount of time to set everything up. But the thing that I'm focusing on was when I went out to Georgia to see my folks. I visited Nick Greer That was, I guess, maybe last year.
Love that dude.
Yeah. And hung out with him. And then we walked basically right next door to his shop is Baxendale's shop. And we've had him on the show, Baxendale Guitars. And Nick picked up one of the guitars over there and was playing it. And it just sounded amazing. And I said, I think it was like an old K or something. And I wasn't expecting to hear that sound. And he was telling me, he's like, I really love these strings. And well, what strings are they? Well, now I've got my 2 acoustics sitting here, and it's time for a restring. So I gave him a holler, and I said, hey, Nick Greer, tell me what those strings were that you were playing. They are Kurt Mangan Monell strings. Huh? And I was like, what's Monell? Did a little bit of research into that. Monell guitar set strings were originally made by these German string makers, Pyramid. And they've been making that string for 150 years. And they describe Monell strings as bridging the gap between pure nickel and nickel-plated steel strings. It just sounded awesome. It sounded like just a big body, beautiful, bright guitar. And so I said, I want to sound like Nick Greer when he plays a guitar. So that's what I'm going to do.
Did he ever talk of any big price difference between
They're actually not that expensive at all. They're like $13 a set.
Yeah, I'm also a dealer, by the way.
Oh, they're cheaper than $13 a set?
Don't let Tony talk. He knows what he's doing.
No, Kurt's a great guy. He used to work for Ernie Ball, and he left the company, bought a bunch of winders. He's one of the only string makers that actually winds their own strings. You know, a lot of the Martin strings and a lot of other strings are actually wound down in Mexico or other places. I've been dealing with Kurt now for 15 years, maybe longer. But yeah, definitely. I think I've probably got some. Are you talking about the coated strings?
No, I don't want the coated ones. And Nick, because he said, well, what are you playing? I said, I think I got some like nano webs on here. It's been a long time. And
that's coated.
Yeah, well, those are the coated ones, and so I'm like, I'm not going to do coated ones this time. So there. Okay. So there.
Well, I've got sets of both, I think, for acoustic. But if not, I can just order them up and.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We'll make it so. Just let me know the gauges and all that stuff.
Because then I'll sound so much better when I play.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Playing acoustic guitar for me is very humbling. Playing any guitar is humbling. But especially acoustic. But if I'm going to play, I figure, well, why not sound as close to Nick as I could? Because he plays a pretty dang good guitar.
I don't know. Listening to your promos, I thought you sounded pretty damn good myself.
Well, thank you, sir. It's all accidental.
That was John playing.
Yeah, I hired Nick. I hired Nick to do it. I got to cut that part out. So how about some of this?
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 4 on the floor.
Okay, Jeff Schroeder of all kinds of fame. You were actually our first 4 on the floor. I don't know if you know that or not, but you were.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Maybe I didn't. Now that you remind me, I remember that it was like this is a new feature.
Yeah. He's secretly looking up on his wall and seeing the picture of the printout of our webpage that he has framed. But for this one. This is because he's already done that twice. We're going to do the Fantasy 4 on the floor. Ooh, it's new. All right. So with that,
I like it.
Give it to us.
Yeah, so these are all things that I do not have, that I would. And, I really had to think about it because after a while, you start accumulating so many things and then I started feeling guilty. I'm like, wow, I have all these pedals and 80% of them don't get used even in a calendar year. maybe even more than that. You know what I mean? You end up using the stuff that you just use all the time. And so I kind of have curbed a lot of that because it's just, I realize that I don't need a bunch of pedals that I don't use. But recently there have been a few things that have come out that are new that I'm like, that have piqued my interest. And then there's a few things that are kind of old that I kind of still wish I had. So I kind of went half and half.
Awesome.
So number one on my list would be this, JHS just came with their Legends of Fuzz line, which I think there's like a Russian Big Muff, Dallas Arbiter fuzz face, a tone bender, and a super fuzz. And in particular, I would really want to check out the tone bender. It's called the Bender, and then the one's called the Supreme, which is the super fuzz. So somewhere down the line, I have to contact my friends over at JHS and see about getting a couple of those. And yeah, I think what's really cool is that, they've spent a lot of time, hunting down like kind of the ultimate version of those pedals, and then tried to make these creations that are kind of replicating like a certain era of those pedals. And then they're like super affordable in general. I think that the list price is around $150. Yeah. And then I think the first couple weeks, like through dealers, they were giving them like an extra 10-15% off. So they're coming out, out of the box, like really affordable, and then giving people access to these great pedals, which is rad, because any of those pedals would be now in the current market ridiculously overpriced for a fuzz pedal.
Oh yeah.
Especially, the fuzz faces, tone benders, and super fuzzes. And, and I've had a chance, Billy's got like he's got them all, vintage ones. And, those pedals, if they're not maintained, so sometimes they're not always that great. Not everyone is amazing,
and they're all very different because all the different parts, different
how they deteriorate is completely different. So that's number one on my list, the JHS Legends of Fuzz line. So it's, and then number two is I saw and I've had a few of their pedals, Cooper Effects. I don't know if have you ever had that guy
Cooper's
on your
been on.
I was gonna say he's probably been, but I said that he just released the Arcades.
Yeah.
Pedal, which is a cool little thing that you can put in basically a cartridge that has a different type of, effect algorithm type of thing. So this pedal could be many different things. And I think he's got quite a few, cartridges lined up already that are made. And so that's definitely something I want to, that looks a lot like just a great idea, an innovative design and fun and smart. And
yeah,
that looks really cool.
It's kind of, for anybody that remembers Atari or even earlier Nintendo stuff, you had a stack of cartridges and you had to plug them in and then
we had to blow into them and then barely put them in.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I know.
So it was very clever. Very fun.
That's, and because it's not it's not a terribly cheap pedal. It's in fact, it's a little bit pricey considering, for a guitar, but considering all the different things it can do, I think it's kind of value over time. And, when you get bored, you just buy a new cartridge and,
well, there's a collectability factor there too. I mean, it's not necessarily your barroom gig kind of throw it in the back of the car kind of thing. But
yeah, that's true. You probably want to be a little bit more careful with it. Make some type of kind of plastic cover or something that goes over the top, plexiglass cover over the top.
I mean, I appreciate when builders are making things that you kind of have two schools of thought. It's like, all right, build something that everybody is going to want and everybody's going to be able to use no matter what. It's going to work. It's going to be awesome. And then you have people who are like, this is just crazy and fun and it'll probably never see the stage for anybody, but it's so cool.
Yeah, it is, and that, yeah, I bet people use this though.
Yeah.
I can see people who do more like the, ambient looping, solo guitar kind of thing, really getting a lot of use out of something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
cool. Number 3 is I've always wanted a real Echoplex EP3, the solid state one. I did for a short while. I had a full tone. I had the tube tape echo, and I had that for a while. And then when the solid state one came out, I rushed down to Chicago Music Exchange because they were one of the first dealers to get one, and I got one, and I had to basically I went through 2 of them, and neither one of them, and I hate to say this, worked correctly. And they realized on that first initial run there was a part issue that they had. So many of those of the first 20 or 30 didn't work very well. And so that was a bummer. But like when it kind of did work, and like just plugging into it, it was amazing. Like it was like it was that amazing thing that it does to your sound, and really cool. And so I could see why guys have used them in the past, just even if they're not using the delay, just to run through, because it really does something kind of magical, and it's nowhere near the same as what the little pedals do that claim they do it.
Right.
It's nothing. It's not even close. But that being said, I guess supposedly the Catlin Bread, the big version of their
the Epoch
Bell Epic, is I've talked to a few people that they say it's spot on, and so I haven't had a chance to try it yet. Because after that kind of experience in the past, I was like, I just need to kind of get off of that idea, because it's too hard to maintain. Anyway, and the tapes, and even a fully it's like a lot of work. And so I decided, I think I'm better off spending that's the kind of thing, that could keep me up at night. when you're a guitar player, you're like, I need to get more tapes, and, are the tapes going bad? And so, but that is in my fantasy picks. I really would like to have one of those.
Like
it would be nice.
The proper old school ones.
Yeah. They just look so cool too, right?
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I would like to just try it out for a few hours.
Yeah.
Just to see.
It sounds great. So
making
cool.
me want one.
Yeah. Whenever
super 3D, and just the feel of it, and the energy coming off of it, the delays. It's really cool, and the tonal thing it's really magical. Yeah.
You better get 2 of them.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean. Well, I think when in the 80s and stuff, when guys like Eric Johnson came out, and they were obviously using it, and he didn't even really use it for the delay. He just used it just for the preamp, because I think you could pick them up fairly cheap, because once digital delays came out, nobody wanted to deal with the hassle of that stuff.
Yeah.
And you could buy 3 or 4 of them as like, well, I got 2 that work, and then I got parts, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, but
it's
now
a niche thing.
It is. And it's like I said, I think now I have to really explore some of these newer things that are out there to see if, I'm sure that they do it really well. I think there's kind of not a lot of territory left uncovered in terms of guitar stuff. You know what I mean? People are kind of figuring out how to do everything. So,
see, when I look at that thing, it reminds me of a movie called Eye of the Needle with Donald Sutherland, and he was a German U-boat spy, and he was on the Dover cliffs with this farmer family, and he had this little box, and I remember him opening this box, and I was fascinated because it looks just like that. It might even be one of those. I mean, let's just face it.
That's probably what they use.
And he gets in, and he goes, Achtung, ist der Nadel kommen, Octoniderste Nadel Coleman. That's all I remember. And I was like, whenever I see that, that's the first thing I think of. Anyways.
That's cool. Yeah.
All right, number 3.
Well, that was 3.
Number 4.
So we're on number 4 now.
By 3, he means number
4. And kind of on the complete opposite end of that same spectrum, and this is not really a pedal, and neither is the Echoplex, but they kind of have pseudo pedal versions. I really would, in my fantasy pick, like an Eventide H3000, because those things sound really, really beautiful, and then do something that's just the original full, big, huge rack unit. Even though they have put some of the similar type of algorithms, like in the H9s and stuff, and I've talked to the people at Eventide about it, and they said, well, it's just kind of the AD converters and stuff that are in the biggie that are just really beautiful, kind of high-end sounding things. But the H3000 there's just some absolutely amazing, gorgeous sounds in there. So some days I think about because they're not terribly expensive anymore, like used, that kind of racket, but it's still pricey. It's not like a couple $100. It's still like $1,200, $1,500, for a working H3000. And you start going like, wow, because apparently like even their plug-in versions that they are making at Eventide that they still don't have all the algorithms in it that the actual hardware units had. So, but that's a cool. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to play through one, but if you ever do, you'll be like, oh my gosh, like it's an experience too.
Now, I feel like you need to go to that closet full of pedals and start pushing some out to get that.
That's true. But then it's, I don't know, it's like,
well,
yeah,
that's fun. I love this. This is great. Like,
that was fun. That actually was fun.
Yeah. Are you saying the other ones weren't?
No, but it was fun to kind of just go like, this is something that I can kind of fantasize about.
You've got me thinking about the Echoplex now. That's going to be just
Jared, you actually should
gnawing
get one
at my brain
because you like all that big old funky stuff.
I know. I have a bunch of that stuff.
I know.
The problem is it just sits after I play with it for an hour, and it goes to Jared's graveyard of pedals.
Exactly. My graveyard's getting pretty big.
Yeah. Well, let's transition into what I anticipate being a really awesome and informative interview. So we've got Jeff Schroeder of Smashing Pumpkins fame, as well as his new band, Night Dreamer. And Jeff, can you throw out any other things that you are currently highly involved in to supplement that?
That's about it. I mean, that keeps me busy. I don't really like to spread myself too thin. I mean, I feel like it's some people, they release tons and tons of stuff all over the place. And I think that at some point in my life, I think that I'd kind of want to do that, but I'm still at a stage where I feel like, okay, I just want to kind of focus on a couple things and then really put all my best effort into doing that, and
Gotcha.
try to make the best kind of records in that way. And then kind of in the twilight of my musical career, I think that's when it's time to just go really wide and do like wide and esoteric. But for now, I think I'm just trying to keep it still kind of focused. Because Tony. I feel like, it's really Tony. Yeah, I feel like it's as you know, Todd, from starting a band, and getting people. There's information overload, so it's just hard to get attention for people to be like, oh, that's right, you got a new record out. Like, because people probably see something on it, especially if they're at home more because of the quarantine and whatnot. You just think like, how many images a day is someone looking at?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Every 10 seconds, people scrolling through. So for them to remember what you're up to, what you're doing, is you have to hit them over the head with a hammer. Like, hey, remember this?
Yeah.
We're still around. We have a new record out. Blah,
Right.
blah, 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 blah.
Well, and
So,
what's weird is that actually causes people to. I wonder if that causes people to actually retain less.
I feel like for me it does.
Yeah. The reason that I'm bringing up those two bands is that, you've shared a lot about what it takes for you to set up your rig for the Smashing Pumpkins, touring the world, massive stages, massive crowds, massive amounts of technology. And you are heavily involved in the effects and the creation of the sounds that you want and that you've gotten out of the Smashing Pumpkins. Shifting over to the Night Dreamer, which is you and your vocalist, you have a completely different sound. And that also comes with a whole bunch of different stuff. So I was wondering, as you were setting this up, were you looking for a sound? Did you already have it? How did you get it? Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's an interesting question, actually, and it's really poignant because it's really gets into the creative process, and I think, especially in kind of the age we live in, where there are so many possibilities, it's can be very liberating, but also very intimidating, because the choices are just pretty limitless. It's not, when I started a band 25 years ago, I had 2 guitars, a beat up suitcase full of pedals, and, a 60s Fender amp. And that was my sound, whatever, the rat pedal and a couple delay pedals and, and my Jazz Master. And that was my sound, and you had to kind of create. It wasn't, I couldn't go like, well, what kind of band do I want to start, or what do I want to sound like? But because of technology now and the way we're able to work, and what I have access to technology wise, it's more like, well, what do I want to do? And when Mindy and I first started to talk about doing something, it was fairly loose in terms of like, well, let's just try to write some songs and get them together. And so I started thinking, okay, what would sound cool to me? And so I knew I wanted to do, I was like, wow, I kind of want to play like I don't want to have too much big power chording with big distorted fuzz guitars, like, because that's what the Pumkins does. So I don't want to get, I feel like if you're in a band and you're going to do something different, you just don't want to do like the lesser version of what you're already doing. So I felt like I should really think about playing guitar in a way that's kind of fundamentally a different approach. And so I thought, I'd really like to play more kind of clean guitar. If I'm going to play clean, like during the song, I want to play them more like clean, arpeggiated, delayed guitar. And so I definitely went about like thinking of like, that's where I'm going to start. And then distortion will be more just for lines and solos, but not a lot of power chords or anything like that. No big, bar chords or anything like that. And so on that EP, there's almost little of that. Like if I'm playing distortion, it's a line or it's like kind of arpeggiated things, but never like too many big chords. And so then I went about choosing, like, well, okay, what kind of amp would I want to use? And so I kind of more started with like a JC 120 type of sound with the delay and chorus. And then I ended up either using that or like a Fender Deluxe type of, it's all digital. So it's just kind of, but I didn't, because I have, using something like Helix or something, even though I have access, I think you have to kind of still, it's like going to the closet, your pedal closet, and going like, okay, I'm going to use these few elements and try to start from there. And then if you need to get something else, you can go grab it. But you just don't want to be looking at everything, because I think you have to, at some point, you have to kind of make some decisions. And, so I started there, and
can I break in just real quick? I think
sure.
it's worth mentioning. It's literally you and Mindy, the singer. There, you don't have. Yeah. There's no drums. There's no bass player. There's no, gospel choir or anything behind you. It's It's very, very sparse, and that's kind of the exciting thing about it. Because
we are an electronic band basically, so everything is, but it didn't start that way. That's the thing is that's so I guess I'll tell a little bit more of the story. So we started having working on the songs and then recording them. And then we recorded them in a more traditional format with actually a drummer and regular bass. And we did a couple songs that way, and it sounded cool, but it just sounded like kind of like another kind of post-punk kind of new wavy kind of band. And that's cool. But, I think, Mindy's, a little bit, younger than me. I won't, I'll shave off a few years of my own age, you know what I mean? But so I could tell she just wasn't responding to it in the same way that I was. And then she was like, hey, do you mind if I take these tracks and I had to go back to Chicago and work on Pumkins. Can I play around with this stuff with the engineer we were working with and try programming some beats and stuff? And we started playing around with the tracks more, and then kind of started developing what became our sound. And then once I started getting information back that way, I was like, well, okay, like even for my distortion sound, I want to do something more radical, something different. And so, because we started adding more synths, and so to have the guitar sit against the synths in a way that felt exciting to me, I started choosing like a different set of sounds. And like nowadays, like my main distortion sound for the band is, I don't even use, it's just 2 fuzz pedals, kind of like a weird doubler modulation thing that's in Helix, and delay and stuff. And so it's like it almost sounds like more of a synth, and I have on my guitars, I have the Sustainiac too, which is kind of like a similar type of like an EBO effect, but I can get infinite sustain and stuff. So I can do all kinds of crazy things. So it was kind of an evolution as the songs and the production style started taking shape. And so now that we kind of have a little bit of a template, things go much faster. Because we know, like, okay, like these are that's kind of the foundations of what our sound is.
You have a new set of parameters that you can hold.
Yeah. And it's a lot more fun. And that's why I kind of like, instead of bouncing around from project to project, it's fun to kind of sink your teeth into something, because, you don't really get to the fun stuff until you kind of put in the work to really start developing like the band sound and stuff. And, because then once you kind of have it, then it's like you can go off the template and come back, and it's a lot of fun.
Now, how about guitars? Are you doing anything different here as opposed to Pumkins?
Yeah. I think when you saw me play, I hadn't gotten my new Yamaha yet, but I was playing that night a Reverend Rees Gabriel's signature guitar,
right.
Because it had the Sustainiac. And that's a great guitar. That's because I had tried Billy had the old Fernandez guitars that had the Sustainer, which is different than the Sustainiac, but it's basically the same technology, but 2 different brands. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. But then when we played in the Detroit area of wherever we played on the tour last summer with Noel Gallagher, Ken from Reverend brought me the Rees guitar to check out, and I was like, okay, I got to get one of these. And Reeves had sent him one back because for some reason he didn't like the neck on it. So Ken was able to sell that one to me. And it's and once I had that combo, I was like, oh my God, this is rad. Mm-hmm. And so, when I was talking to Yamaha about building some new guitars, they built me a new Pacifica, that has like a Floyd Rose and the Sustainiac, and
it's hot pink too. I mean, like
it's technically it's orange or red, but it's a crazy looking guitar, but it's an amazing. I mean, because it's completely custom made. Like they actually had to go back, and it's like based off a body design from like the 80s or 90s kind of, but then with new contours and stuff, and it's got like the top of the line Floyd Rose and stuff, and the pickup is from the Duncan custom shop. It's like the George Lynch Hunter pickups. I wanted something like that, and the neck is essentially, it's very similar to Ibanez Gem, but it's got 24 fret stainless steel. It's got extra rods in the neck, so it's very, very stable. It's a great guitar. I have to say, it's a very, 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 very fine instrument.
Early on when we had you on, we were talking about some of your musical influences, and I think we've talked before about like early metal and early new wave, or like late new wave, and it was, it's kind of cool to see you take something, you took a little bit from both of those worlds. There's a little bit of, I can see a lot of the past in that, but it's a very new sound. And so to me, that's really exciting. You're able to bring a guitar, just even the aesthetic of a guitar. If you saw that in the hands of just about anybody else, you go, I know exactly what you're going to do with it. But you don't do that with it, and that's what's really cool.
Yeah. So right before the quarantine hit, we played a show in LA, and a friend of mine came to the show, and I don't think he ever heard the band or anything. He just saw like, hey, we're playing. He came out, and then he wrote something. He said it was basically like if the guitar is a mix between Robin Guthrie of the Cocteau Twins and Steve Vai. And I feel like that's a pretty accurate description of kind of the worlds that I'm kind of negotiating within the aesthetics of the band.
Yeah.
I feel like it felt good because I think that's exactly my kind of thinking, to kind of incorporate that world into this world. Two things that you wouldn't normally think would go together that are kind of in some ways ideologically opposed.
Well, when you look about, if you think about Steve Vai, you can say, okay, I can take the entire package of that, or I can take certain elements. It's not like you're taking all of Steve Vai and mashing it up with something else. You're pulling certain elements, that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you had that, you came out with the single "Another Life," and when I was listening to that, as soon as I came to the guitar solo, I expected like this big soaring Pumpkin-esque, or Jeff kind of, oh, here he goes, it's gonna be amazing. And it was so simple, and I got so turned on by that. I was like, man, this is amazing. And I've shared it with freaking everybody, and I was specifically calling out, I'm like, listen to the solo, because it was almost like an anti-solo. But what we were able to what a listener is able to focus on are that tone that I hadn't heard that tone. It was like, how am I still able to hear a new tone? This is fantastic.
And what's crazy is that song went through, from the demo to that version, that's, we ended up releasing like 3 or 4 different versions. The solo is from from the demo. Never redid the solo. It's like from like the very, it's like the second take that I was just like, oh, I want to put a solo here, and quickly dialed in a sound on my Helix Stomp, which is like the little small one. And the whole time through recording it with drums, drum machines, redoing all the other guitars, that sound never changed, and recorded on it was literally like 5 minutes of in space and time, just like, oh, I need to put something here, and then just did it. I think it's literally like the second take or something like that. But you're like, oh, that's cool. That's it. That's perfect.
It really is. And I think that there are a handful of things when, like, if you're driving or you're running or you're doing something, you're like, you know what? I need to hear this very specific thing right now. Like, sometimes I really need to hear, Butler's voice from the Psych Verse. I need to hear that.
Oh,
it doesn't sound like anything else on the planet. And there are certain things, you could say Lemmy or whomever that person is that you might need, or that, look, I'm going to admit the guitar solo from Soma. It kills me every time. And this is one of those things. I'm like, that it is a new sound that sometimes I want to hear just a bunch of that and just have that, and then say, cool, all right, that fulfilled a need that I was itching for. So I appreciate your work on that. Yeah. It was excellent. And everybody, if you have not heard already, please check out Night Dreamer. And you've released a couple of different tracks on Spotify and elsewhere.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I wanted to go back to the Sustainiac and Sustainer. I guess most people know that it's essentially a pickup that causes the strings to vibrate via a circuit. But I was kind of curious as a player. I mean, how are you using it? And I mean, did you go through some genesis of, trying different things and making the strings sustain a special way or using the circuitry a special way?
Well, the reason that I sought it out was because on the EP, there's a song called Heat Waves, and I did a bunch of EBow guitars. And so when we started playing live, it was the thing of like, well, I have to go from the EBow then to play like a hot rockin' lead. And so it'd be like thing, okay, I gotta like put the EBow down on beat 3 and then set it and then hit the, the patch change on Helix and then the pickup. And it was just like, this is so clumsy. And, I'd pull it off like 50% of the time. And so I was like, maybe I should seek out this, a guitar with the sustainer or the Sustainiac. And, so that came out of more of a practical purpose. And then once I realized like what I could do with it, I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then if you play it like the way I do is I have like my basic sound is 2 fuzz pedals run into each other, a fuzz factory. And then I don't know, it's called the Tima on the Helix, which I think is maybe like a Tim, but that overdrive pedal or something like that. It's just those 2 things into each other. So with the Sustainiac and then the other effect I use is called the double take, and it's supposed to mimic like taking a mono track and doubling it as like a double. But if you turn the takes, you can add the amount of takes and then the slot factor. If you turn stuff way up, it's like sounds like a weird chorus or something. It's a really unique sounding type of thing. And so between the 2 fuzzes and that, and then like delay, and then with the sustain, you can get all kinds of. It's a very reactive type of experience to where you play something, then you get something back from the effect, and so it's like you're kind of playing in real time.
That's kind of like the TC mimic doubler kind of thing, or something. It
is, yes, yeah. The double take is I think is very similar to that, and so it's very inspiring in that way. Is as a player, you kind of. It's kind of more of a reactive type of thing, and I really enjoy that.
Cool. So with the Sustainer, or not the Sustainer, the Sustainiac, I'm gonna trip over that word. Have you experimented different, string gauges and different kinds of string? Have you experimented with anything like that to maybe get the optimal sound?
No, because I mean, my sound is so jacked up. Like there's so much fuzz and stuff. I don't think it would make much of a difference. I go for because my guitar, I'm using the Floyd's and super jumbo frets, like a metal guitar. So I think I mean, for years I was using 10s for E natural, but now I've even switched to 9s because it's really, that's more of the sound. You know, like, you know, and I'm sure that you guys, I don't know if you guys discussed this on the show, like a couple months ago, Rick Beato did the whole.
We did. We discussed it in depth.
I know.
I switched to 9s.
I listened to. I did listen to you. That's why I thought. I'm like, I listened to that podcast. Yeah. Actually, I did listen, and so that's what I thought. I'm like, well, I think you guys saw. But I really realized, I'm like, oh, like that's the sound I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Like that's a certain type of attack of the pick against the string, and for that kind of metal guitar playing that I like to pull certain things from. Mm-hmm. And it's not only that, it's the way that you can vibrato the string and shake the string and bend. And with the Floyd, it took me a little while to get used to, because I used to have a pretty over aggressive right hand, as we tend to do in kind of alternative bands, where it's like, mm-hmm. You tend to hit too hard and knock guitars out of tune and stuff. Because we're used to using down tuning and using thicker strings where you have a little more give. But once I kind of got that back in order, so I haven't experimented with that. I think what's really the issue is what's really where I think the experimentation would be what type of bridge pickup you're using, because as soon as you turn it on, that's the pickup that you hear. Even if you're on the neck pickup, if you're using your neck pickup, but you turn the Sustainiac on, the sound is coming from the bridge.
So let's just clarify really quick. The Sustainiac is it's on board on your guitar. Just if anybody's trying to figure this out, it's not a pedal.
It's essentially, it's not a pedal. Yeah. It is the neck pickup is the Sustainiac.
Yeah, I'll have to look into those.
Yeah. It's cool. It's because I told when I got the Reverend, I'm semi-friendly with Reeves from The Cure, and I said, hey, I got one of your Reverends and he said, be careful, it's an addiction. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, because he's got like 3 signature guitars, or I think now with Reverend, and he's like, I only put it on the one model because it's like once you get into it, like you just want to use it all. You want to use it all the time. And I know what he means. You kind of becomes like a thing where you're like, hey, turn this on, because cool stuff just starts happening.
Yeah.
A lot of people, Get O'Brien from Radiohead's a big user of it. I think he uses on his guitar, it's the Fernandez Sustainer. Mm-hmm. But it's essentially the same. It's very similar.
Yeah, sometimes when you overdo something that's awesome, it makes that awesomeness less special.
Yeah.
Now, have you considered using a Gizmotron?
Oh, you, Tony.
I would love. I've seen people use those. I've never tried one, but that's like some next level stuff.
Yeah.
just madness.
Yeah.
Looks cool. Yeah.
So
it's really cool.
Jeff, one of the things that maybe the last thing that I would like to go down the path with you on here is I'm fascinated with the idea that you travel the world, you play massive stages, you've got a guitar tech, you've got a huge library of songs. At a certain point, that becomes like probably a bit autopilot to us, when you're doing so many shows and you're using the same gear and it's exactly what's going on, and you have all that at your feet.
As they call it, an controlled environment.
Controlled environment. There you go. Now,
controlled environment.
Now, when you're at home now, you've been spending a lot of time at home, and you also have another band that requires completely different gear. What is the transition like for when you're at home or at your own personal studio, wherever you do your playing? How different is it from, like, what does that look like?
Well, at home, I don't plug into like a big, like 100-watt amp or anything. I'm just using, you're usually in a room of, working on my computer recording and then practicing around that. So I either use I have the Yamaha THR amps that if I'm just practicing, I'll use one of those, or I have, I just bought the new ZT Lunchbox Reverb. I have this one, but have you ever guys checked out those? Mm-hmm. Those amps are awesome. So cool. You know what I mean? And they sound, especially with my arch tops, it's just such great. So I either use that, but they take pedals really well. So if I want to sit there and play with pedals and stuff, I use the ZT. And just because, even like I have I have a few Fender Deluxes, but if you're in like a room that's like, like not a huge, it's so loud. It's just loud. You're just like, oh my gosh. Like, it's like, and my hearing's still really good.
That's amazing.
But because as soon as I joined the Pumkins, I've always wore earplugs. And then when we switched to in-ears, so I've never played shows with them with no earplugs, but I used to play like that all the time before, and my ears will start ringing pretty quickly. So I don't really love to be around a lot of loud volume too much. I try to keep it. So I use small amps, or to be honest, I use Helix on the computer and I'm playing like that most of the time. And so that's honestly really great, because then the transition between now, especially if we're working on new Night Dreamer material, is I'm literally recording the part. I save the preset and then I can bang it straight over to my hardware unit.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no translation point anymore. It's exactly the same. It's amazing. And to me, that's the big paradigm shift, and why it's so useful for me to do that. And that I can go from like, we're literally creating sounds to playing live, and I don't have to spend the time to do it. Or, the kind of technical support from their end from Line 6 has been so good that, like, if I've been like, hey, I have to fly from here to here, can I borrow a Helix in New York at a gig? I can just sit there and then I just hook it up to my laptop and zoom all my presets in, and it's set up, and I can do all that kind of stuff. So, in this band, like, when we travel, we have actually added a third person to play some keyboards and run the computer, because it was a little much for me to do everything.
Yeah, I noticed you like, hang on, I gotta set up my next song.
I got just too much. So now we have, a third, and which is great. And he's like really kind of better than me on like the computer and Pro Tools and Ableton and all that kind of stuff. But we have to travel on our own, and so even just like pedal board, like having to have a pedal board and an amp would be actually too much. So now that and the way we play, everything is in the box. We carry our own in-ear system, our own in-ear monitors, and we can show up anywhere and just play.
Yeah.
And it's rad, and it sounds rad, because like we basically, the front of house person only has to mix basically the backing tracks, my guitar, Mindy's vocals, and now the synth, the extra synth stuff. So it's not a ton of elements, but it's basically, it's pretty simple to do. And so it just always, and then to us, when we're playing, it's like we can literally rehearse in a hotel room.
Yeah.
Because there's no sound other than our in-ears.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, for a player, that's got to be pretty amazing. It's a little different if you're in the crowd, though. That's a different experience altogether. Especially if you're close. The visceral experience is a little bit different.
Yeah, you don't have that kind of sound, especially in a club coming off the stage.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I really truly experienced that. I was at a music venue at USC in Southern California. Trying to remember the name of the hall, but it's basically this huge, long, narrow hall, and we were there to see Megadeth. I remember just like, elbowing and clawing my way. I was like, gotta get up front, gotta get up front. And I got there, and it was like I could hear the strings on Dave's guitar.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? I do not like this. And so I just went all the way back again.
I know. It's and that's why, like, if we ever go on tour with Nitro, they have something called Power Cab that Line 6 makes. That's basically like it can do many things, but one of the things that it does is it's like a full range kind of speaker cabinet. Mm-hmm. So you can have some sound on stage. Yeah. And I think that's
Third Eye Blind had that too. They had these smaller cabinets right in the front if you were in the front or second row, and it was nice because it didn't blow you away, but yet you could hear everything.
Well, now like when we play with Pumkins, because we don't have any cabinets or anything on stage either. So if you're like right up front, you're not getting any sound off the stage other than the drums and Billy's vocals. And so we have a ton of those little small PA speakers that they put them across the front of the stage. Yeah. So people hear that. So because people in the front, once bands started doing that, people would be in the, we used to play all the time. And even before, like, people would be up in the very front, and they used to drive Billy nuts, and they'd be like, "We can't hear your voice." Before they started doing those small PA speakers at the front of the stage, because you play a big venue, the PA is like way up there. Yeah. People, they're like, "We can't hear," and he's like, "What do you want me to do? I'm not the sound man." Like, they think like he's mixing.
Yeah. I saw a video where he told the crowd, he's like, "Yeah, you don't want to get too close to us anyway. We're all sweaty." And I mean,
especially nowadays, right? Yeah. Nobody would,
It is a weird thing, though, because that's, when you are a fan and the song and you feel the song and you play it loud in your car and then you go there and you want that, you're going there specifically for that visceral experience, and then you don't get it. It is weird.
Well, and nowadays they have like the dB restrictions inside even arenas is really very, very strict, and it's not very loud.
Yeah. Maybe
which is good. I mean, it is good. In I know. Well, I was thinking, what's an interesting thing, because on that Shiny tour, but actually on both this last tour we did too, we all, we had this Kevin, our sound man, he likes to work for us because we use actually an analog board for front of house. And we, made that decision because on the Shiny tour, even though it was limiting in terms of inputs, we would literally, he kind of ran out of inputs. We felt like for a 3-hour plus show, analog is better on the ears than digital. So, 3 hours of loud guitar through digital can be kind of harsh. And so we specifically went the analog route, and people would always say, "Oh, it was so great. My ears never got tired." And, and I think it was honestly because of the analog board.
Interesting.
I mean, and he's an amazing front of house mixer, but I think that regardless of his skills, I think just the analog signal makes a difference.
Yeah.
I have to say that tour, the show we went to, it was one of the better sounding that I've heard out of the 4 or 5 other bands I've seen in the last 5 years. Sound's come a long way, and maybe that does have to do with that new dB restriction, because
I think that, and PA technology, speaker technology has really gotten better. And what's so crazy is those speakers up there are noise canceling on the back, because for bands like for us, you would get this wall of low end that would come down off the speakers onto the stage. You get all kinds of weird phase cancellations and stuff. And it's crazy. Now on the side of those speakers, they're noise canceling. So on stage, it's like we don't get any of it, and it's like it's super clean up there. And it's funny, like if I sometimes it sounds like I can pull my inners out. It's almost like you can't because we're in this like noise canceling zone.
Yeah.
Like you can't hear anything coming out of the PA. You can only hear it bouncing off the walls of the arena. It's really strange. Really strange.
That's awesome. That's weird. I'd like to experience that.
I don't know, Jared.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I'm not asking to.
No. I'm saying if you're up there in a noise canceling zone and all of a sudden you let one go or something, we'd all know. Everyone would know.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true.
And I'm a little tall. Well, I'm about Billy's height, right? Billy's what, 6'5", 6'6"?
Yeah. You guys are about the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
we'll
you
hear
could
the
fill
same
in
thing.
sometime, Jared.
Yeah, right.
People won't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Jeff, are you guys currently working on new stuff for either of those bands?
Both, yeah. Well, Pumkins, we have a new album that's done in the can that's going to be coming out.
Oh man.
Sometime this year. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, we're just trying to figure out the best kind of possible scenario for that to happen. Then Billy started working on even another new album that once we're able to kind of get together, we'll kind of work on that. But he's kind of started getting the ball rolling on that. Night Dreamer, we have two brand new songs, like mixed, mastered, ready to go. And those were that we just finished, but we're just kind of to also. I think we were happy with the way they came out, and we just decided we're going to kind of delve into a bigger work. At first we're like, oh, we'll just release a single or do an EP, but I think we decided we have a bunch of songs kind of floating around. We're like, I think we have an album here. And so I think we want to, and since, in all honesty, since we can't play live or do anything, that we feel like there's really no huge rush into putting it out.
Right.
So even if we take another 6 months and just finish doing a record, we'd rather have a whole album. So I think, we're way down that road. I mean, we have like 5 or 6 more songs that are in various stages of completion.
That's
so
awesome.
we're getting there. Yeah. And this stuff is, I think it's pretty different. It's similar, but it's definitely like a kind of a progression. I think I'm kind of curious to see what what the reactions are going to be. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we appreciate you sharing all of that out. I mean, again, here's another great example of, and I am in no way is any kind of an advocate for Line 6 or anything, but guys, with the last 4 podcasts, there have been some pretty compelling reasons to use either the Stomp or the HX effects, or if you're feeling really ambitious, the Helix or something like that. But as we are at home, and a big amp can really beat the crap out of your ears. And if you're looking to try to create or practice or just explore new sounds beyond whatever your favorite pedals are, man, these are really great alternatives.
Yeah, the reason another thing I'd like to kind of use that stuff is I can get sounds that are, to be honest, like almost essentially identical to my big Pumkins live rig. And so if I'm practicing something on studio monitors, I get to really practice with my sound and get used to like how I'm going to deal with all the distortion, the noise, the string noise. And I feel like that's such a key element of being able to rehearse properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes if you're playing like kind of just a clean guitar, you think, oh, I got that passage down. Then you play with a bunch of distortion. You realize, oh my gosh, that's not how sloppy it sounds.
Yeah. I get that all the time. Well, we're going to transition from this super fun time into another super fun time. Jared?
Yes, it is time for Would You Rather. All right, this week's Would You Rather, I don't think we've done one quite like this one. It's going to be interesting, so buckle up, buttercups. So you're at an auction, and there's only 2 lots of gear to choose from, and you have to choose which lot of gear that you're going to buy. You don't have I mean, that's just the way it is. The auctioneers put this gear in these certain lots.
I'm just reading
that's
it.
There's
I don't have any control over this. I'm just reading it.
That's correct. So you're at the auction.
Is this a traditional auctioneer with the?
Yeah, the guy's going, hey.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So the first lot of gear, you will have a Fender Mustang, a Maestro Echoplex, the original one, the best one, and a 1970 Fender Showman dual reverb amp. The second lot, you will have a Gibson Sonics, a Mutron biphase, and a Marshall JCM 800. One or two.
Can you do one more? Could do that rundown just one more time, just so I can.
No problem.
Yeah.
The lot one is a Fender Mustang, the best Maestro Echoplex version you can get.
The EP1?
Yes.
The tube one.
If that's the one you want, well, whichever's better.
Okay.
And in because it's got to be a tough decision. And a 1970 Fender Showman dual reverb. The second lot, a Gibson Sonics, the gray one, the whatever,
the black,
a biphase Marshall biphase Mutron biphase.
Biphase, yeah.
Right, the big one, and the big giant old one, and a Marshall JCM 800.
That is it. I gotta say, first out of the gate, I was like, blah blah blah. Yep. I don't. This is tough. Okay, Tony Baloney, go for it.
Those are both interesting lots, to say the least.
It's an auction. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
it is
great.
an auction.
This is a good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Package one again is the
Fender Mustang,
the Echoplex. What
and
amp?
Dual Showman reverb,
Dual
1970. And if you want to spice it up, and it comes with the 215 JBLs. They used to call it the ear splitter.
Yeah, that is especially with the Mustang.
Yeah.
Oh man, I do love a JCM 800. Not crazy about the Sonics.
Whatever.
Wow. I think just because there's an original Echoplex in it, I'm going to go with package one.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that, yes, the Mustang is probably not going to be the best companion to a dual Showman.
It'll just amplify the Mustang. Is that good?
Yes. Well, I mean, you may not be able to hear after playing for a couple of hours with it, but yeah, I think I'm going to go package one.
Didn't Kurt Cobain put that? He put a humbucker in a Mustang or something like that, didn't he?
Well, yeah, there was a model called the Jagstang, which was his drawing. That was a combination of a Jaguar and a Mustang. I think he liked the Mustang tremolo as opposed to the Jaguar tremolo, and the body shapes were kind of an amalgamation of those two. But yeah, so he had kind of a slanted humbucker with a slanted.
It's going for the Van Halen sound.
Yep.
Exactly. So yes, so I'm going with package one.
Go ahead, Jared.
I made this tough on myself because
I think you make
JCM,
a lot of things tough on yourself.
I have some of these items and I really like them a lot, but because I don't have any of the things actually in lot one, I'm just going to go for it. I'll take the Echoplex and I've always wanted a dual Showman reverb because my dad had one a long time ago, so I just wanted to see what that was like. But just because of those two reasons right there, I'm just going to have to go with one and say goodbye to the JCM 800.
Loud and painful come to mind.
You just turn the amp around and have it face the wall. I don't know.
Yeah, put the speakers facing down.
Well, couldn't you turn? You can turn it down, and I mean, on the Echoplex, don't you have a volume on that? I mean, you could. I don't know if that would.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, but it's. Yeah, I mean, a dual Showman is just Is that 100 watts or 200 watts? I forget what it is.
It's a lot of watts.
monster.
It's more
It's
watts.
lots
than
of
you need.
watts.
Jeff, what are you doing?
It's ear bleeding.
I had to look up the Gibson Sonics because I wasn't quite sure what it was. And even that being the case, I'm definitely at this point I'd go the Marshall route.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because I have similar things to the dual show. I mean, I have a Bandmaster, and from that, kind of, and I've had Bassmans from that era. Had the heads and stuff, and I've known people that have had the dual Showman. You're talking about the big. It's like a double one, though, right?
Ooh,
Yeah. I know that. Yeah, I definitely would go. I'm going to be rocking the JCM 800 and the Gibson.
that's a good choice.
Jared, you and Tony both know where I'm going with that. I personally
Yes.
like a Sonics because I just think they're cool looking. They're just cool looking, and I can.
Those
do
look
all that.
they look like the guitars that Paul Stanley would break on stage, like the fake ones at the end. Is that
That's probably true.
like in the 70s? I feel like that's what he would break, like at the end of like in a Live One era.
Yeah,
I'm looking like they're still. I mean, wow, they're very affordable.
they are.
Still.
Yeah.
Well, that's because the bodies have a wood core and then they're coated in plastic.
Yes, and it's a bolt-on
The
neck.
rest, and it's a bolt-on neck. Yeah.
Yeah, but whatever. It's cool looking. But just real quick plug. Rock and Roll Relics. If you like that look, but want an actual set neck and one that is not covered in plastic,
Then
that
don't make
looks
a good
cooler,
one then.
Then go over and check one out over there.
Yeah.
You can
I'm
also
still
get
going that. I'm still going with number 2. And I'll accidentally unplug the biface. Whatever. So
That's a really cool pedal, man.
no,
That's
I know
a
it
cool
is.
thing.
I know it is. I would like
It's
to play
big,
with that.
though.
It is big. Everything.
Mine still has the old school 2-prong plug.
Yes.
Get electrocuted.
Well, that thing was
Right.
That was a super fun. Would you rather, Jared? Well done on that.
That was good. That was good. That
Yeah.
was good.
Thank you.
So we got to thank a few people.
Of course, we have to do this.
Do it.
At this point of the show, Todd likes to invite me, in conjunction with the rest of the knobs, to thank a special group of people. These are our executive producers. Somebody out there, I'm sure, is driving down the road and saying, what's an executive producer? And more importantly, how do I become one? My friends, the answer is quite simple. You go to patreon.com/theguitarknobs, and you'll find a couple of different levels in which you can become a patron of this very podcast, The Guitar Knobs. Each level comes with its own bevy of prize packages, including things like barefoot buttons and picks and stickers and T-shirts and
Keychain.
flashlights.
Occasionally.
Flashlights,
Yeah, maybe.
occasional flashlight,
for things.
occasional keychain, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Depending on what level you're at, boy, oh boy, you get loaded up.
You do get loaded up. But the top of the heap would be at the executive producer level.
That's right.
In addition to all that great stuff that you'll love and cherish forever. And plus the warm feeling in your heart you get from becoming an executive producer. There's one more thing.
Hey,
and I
Jerry
think
Lewis,
Jared-
get to the point.
Hey, lady! Jared, can you help me?
You get to have your name read on the thing.
Your name read on the thing, and that's
Do it.
what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to start with our newest executive producer, Mr. Richard Kendall.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Hey.
Thank you, Richard.
Todd sent us a copy of your email to him, and it's a great story, and we look forward to talking
Beautiful.
to you more.
Yeah. We'll probably share some at some point.
We should share that.
Yeah, just not right now.
In addition to Richard, how about Steve Keys, Mark Garton, Adam Johnson, James Pennington, Matt Hart, James White, Brett Alexander, Liam Martin from Bilgola Guitars, Justin Jones, Doug Gann, Tim Novak, John Esterly, Chris Heidel, Brad Partridge, Tyler Bray, John Anglin, Anthony Lathrop, Johnny Knowles, Stefan Lamb, Michael Senchuk, Brian Robison, Ken Sayers, Michael Van Zandt, Doug Christ, Darren Gregory, Chris Kearney, John Daly, Martin Cliff, and Tom Brazen. But wait, don't stop. No, there's more. There's another level just slightly above the executive producer level, and that's our Grand Poobahs. This fez-wearing group of fun supporters helps us out even more than executive producers, and we really appreciate it. So we'd like to thank Jonathan Jerusik, Corey Nigro, David Kaminga, Cody Lane, Cody Foster, Sean S. Yes. And Tommy Manasco.
Right on. Thank you, everyone. Humongous props. You are such a help to our show, and we could not thank you enough. We're currently working on, as we're getting back to normalcy in some way, shape, or form, getting our studio possibly worked out. So it's a great help for us. Thank you so much. Jeff Schroeder, thank you so much for the time that you spent with us. It's always great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm always ready to be on the show.
Awesome.
Please
keep us abreast of all of the new stuff that you have working on, and I'm super excited for new music coming from you and your bands.
Great, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check out the entire Pumkins library and also Night Dreamer. Go out and check that stuff out. Jared, where can people find your stuff?
Well, go to BrandonWoundPickups.com. You will find new looking gear, old looking, new pickups, all sorts of things like that. I know. Every time I say it, I just trip over it. But that's okay.
Do you make pickups that look like new?
I do.
Can you make those
old?
new pickups look old?
I can do that.
Okay.
So I do all sorts of fun stuff like that. And I've got the new noiseless Jazzmaster pickups out now.
Yummy.
They sound vintage, but there's no buzz. So
I gotta get it. I have to get a set of those because, you know, I know we need to end this, but I was like, once this was over and I could actually use my guitar. I was going to ask you if I could send you a set anyway. So
yeah,
awesome,
I would know because, you know, years ago, many years ago, I asked a company, a big pickup company, and they made me a set of stacked Jazzmaster, you know, hum canceling, and they were unusable, you know, and so I kind of gave up on the idea, and so I'm super excited to.
Yeah,
these are not.
You're gonna
these
love
are not
them.
stacked. Yeah, they're different. So
Eric Camaro
you got some different kind. You got some different kind of mojo or black magic. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yep. And they fit right down in the cavity anyway. You don't have to dig out any wood or anything. They just go right in. Maybe use just a bit less foam, but you shouldn't have any trouble.
Yeah.
So
great.
For those who are interested even more about this, Eric Camaro, who was also on our show at one point in time, he does a lot of demos out there. He did a video about Jared's noiseless pickups. So check that out, and you can kind of hear what they sound like.
Yeah. Did a great job on that.
Tony Baloney, how about yourself?
Let's just say you need a special pick guard. Let's just say, well, you really won't need to do it with the Jazzmaster noiseless ones that Jared has. But if you're changing out pickups and you want to go something different, I can take care of you. Go over to pickguardian.com. Check out some of the things I have to offer there, including the new line of the new Reverend guitar pick guards.
Awesome. Fantastic.
If you want to see some of the projects and things that we've been talking about, you can go over to my Instagram account, which is pickguardian and the number 1. And if you don't see something that you want, shoot me an email and I will get you some information and pricing and availability.
And lots of material options, all kinds of really cool stuff.
Don't forget you can do Reverend stuff now too.
He just said that.
I think I just said that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for playing. All right. I like
Hey, Jared,
ending
do you
with-
make pickups?
Oh boy.
You should, Jared, you should do some noiseless Jazzmaster pickups.
Yeah, that's
You know what? I think I'm going to try to do that, and they're not going to be stacked.
Perfect. Make them look
I'm so sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
My bad.
No problem. You can send me an email, todd@theguitarknobs.com, or direct message me on Instagram @guitarknobs. We would love to hear from you, hear what you are currently playing, what you like about the show, maybe even what you don't like about the show. I'm sure there's something. Send us your Would You Rathers, too, like the one that Jared just gave us, which was awesome. Love to read that online on the air here. So, again, huge thank you to Jeff. And everybody out there, have a great guitar week. Take care of yourselves and subscribe.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Jared's wearing a diaper, so he won't have to.
Right.
Keep muting. I think that was working out really nicely.
Blech.
That's what.
Why did I have to say anything?
I don't know.
I think we all can record this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
To blackmail each other in the future.
Don't tell any secrets.
Yes.
I believe his diaper's full. It's squirting out the top.
Sorry about that. Well, I'll be right back.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.